I need to turn this on? Okay. Okay, Dr. Kisner, go ahead.
All right. Whoa. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. We're in a school setting, so we're going to start on time. And we're going to end at 8:30. So I want to first welcome everyone and thank you for coming out. It's great to have parent and community interest in our redistricting process and being engaged and part of our school system. So I thank you very much. My name is Scott Kisner. I'm the superintendent of schools. Okay, so thank you. I do want to recognize a few people before I continue. I think I have 4 school board members here. I'd like to recognize our school board chair, Ms. Patricia Healy, our vice chair, Mr. Dwayne McCosker, school board member, Dr. Chase, Sarah Chase, and school board member, Ms. Holly Hazard. Okay, and the others, I think, will be joining us later. So the procedure tonight is to have a presentation. In a few minutes, we'll walk you through the process of asking questions. And the presentation tonight, as hopefully you're aware, is to help explain why we're going through the redistricting process. Tonight is not the night where we're presenting the redistricting proposals. That will happen in January, and we'll share those dates with you a little later. I know you're here, so this might not make sense of what I'm about to say, but just in case you want to know what you heard and you want to check, we are taping the entire program tonight, and the PowerPoint and the whole program will be on our website tomorrow morning. Okay, so if you have friends who are not able to be here, please refer them to the site. So what I'm going to do now is introduce Ms. Cherie Johnson, who's going to walk you through the evening and the Q&A process.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Cherie Johnson. I'm the Director of the Office of Strategic Communication and Community Engagement. Many of you may have received note cards at the door when you walked in. You can place your questions on those note cards. After a presentation from our consultants with ArcBridge, I will serve as the moderator and read your questions. The consultants will answer those questions, and you can also continue to fill out the cards with your questions, and a member of the communication team will walk by, pick up your questions, and bring them up here to me. We will wrap up the event at about 8:25 p.m. and try to answer every question. If we do not answer this evening, we will respond to you within several days with that information. So please be sure to place your name and email address on the card in case we have to follow up with you with an answer. This can be a frustrating time for some, but please remember to be respectful this evening. Do not shout out questions. I will only respond to the note cards. There are also 3 other meetings coming up on January 15th at Edward E. Drew Middle School, January 17th at Stafford Middle School, and January 23rd at H.H. Poole Middle School. All meetings begin at 7 p.m. and end at 8:30 p.m. At this time, I would like to introduce our consultants with ArcBridge for a presentation.
Hello. Right. Good evening. And this is the elementary school redistricting information session. And I am here from ArcBridge Consulting. We are a Virginia-based corporation, and we are based in Virginia, in Sterling. And we have been in business for over 20 years. I am Preeti Mathur. I will be doing the presentation this evening. I have Sam with me here. He's from ArcBridge. I have Michael Burgess. I have Leslie Romero. So we are here from ArcBridge, and we are here to answer your questions. And I have a master's degree in geography from Virginia Tech, and I've also had the privilege to work at the U.S. Department of Justice in their Civil Rights Division for 5 years. So I have been doing redistricting for some time. Okay. Now to answer the question, why are we here today? Okay. First of all, we want to present to you the elementary school boundaries the way they are. That is what we are going to do. The second thing that I want to present to you is the redistricting timeline, the roadmap. Like I said, this is the first session. This is the information session. And then from there on, we are going to define the parameters that we are going to use for redistricting. And then I'm going to present the analysis that we have done so far. We have done capacity analysis, enrollment projection analysis, and we have also done connectivity or contiguity analysis. The redistricting process. Stafford County is one of the fastest growing counties in Virginia, and you have 17 elementary schools, and the goal is here to rebalance enrollment in each of those schools. So what we are going to look at is proximity. We are going to look at contiguity or connectivity. We are going to use the SCPS planning units for redistricting. We are also going to take diversity into consideration, and our goal is to minimize the changes. Okay? The redistricting process has to be completed by February of next year. Here is the redistricting timeline. Cherie mentioned it a little bit, and Dr. Kisner also mentioned it. So if you notice, we are right here at the first tab, which is 12.5, and this is the information session. Now, after this, what we are going to do is go back and look at alternatives, and then we are going to come back on January 8th to work with the school board. Then there would be meetings for the community, 15th, 17th, and the 23rd. So you will be invited to those meetings, and we are looking at open communication, so please do communicate with us. And later on in the presentation, we will tell you the communication plan that we have developed. So we are working with September 28 enrollment data, and as per the enrollment data, you have 12,476 elementary students. The program capacity is 15,171. So the capacity utilized is 82%. So you still have 17–18% still there. Minority, 37%, and free or reduced lunch is 30%, and limited English proficiency is 8.46%. This is based on September 28 enrollment data that was provided to us, no pre-K. First thing that we did was capacity analysis. And I hope you can see the slide clearly. What we have done is we have color-coded the schools by the capacity, program capacity, the enrollment, and the capacity utilized. I know a lot of you are looking at the slide, as it's hard to read, but I'm going to read it out to you. And what I would like to say is the light green is where there is capacity, And as the colors go darker, red, what happens is that the capacity is near 100%. Oh. Maybe if we turn off a light or two, it might be better. So right off the bat, if you look at the slide, we have Garrisonville and we have Rock Hill, and they are under 70% utilized. Then we have the lighter shade of green, which is under 80% utilization. So, and the one in orange is less than 90%, and the one in red are those schools which are greater than 90% but less than 100%. Okay? Can you see it better now? But what we are going to do is we are going to put the presentation on the website so you will have access to it, okay? So I'll move on to the next slide. What we have done is presented the same information, but we have presented it on a map so you can see it better. And here we are showing the same information, but in a map so you can see it better. So the schools which are greater than 90% is Brent, Rocky Run, Stafford, Whitewater, and Winding Creek. Okay? The ones in green are the ones, the lighter green is less than 80%, and the dark green is, which is less than 70%, and those are the two schools, which is Garrisonville and Rock Hill. Okay? Now, here we are going to present some observations based on this enrollment data that was provided to us. So the good news is that as of now, each school enrollment is within its program capacity. Okay? The next observation is there are 5 schools which are up to 90% or greater of their capacity. So these 5 schools are Brent, Stafford, Rocky Run, Whitewater, and Winding Creek. Okay? Garrisonville and Rock Hill are less than 70% utilized. Okay? So now what we are going to do is we are going to look at the schools which are greater than 90% capacity. The first one is Brent, and as you can see, Brent has a big area, and the adjacent schools to Brent are Garrisonville and Rock Hill. And we have Hartford, we have Falmouth, we have Winding Creek. So this is just to show you how the schools are and what the adjacent schools are, so that when we start making the adjustments, these schools may be affected. Same thing for Rocky Run. So we have zoomed in into Rocky Run, and you can see that we have Ferry Farm, we have Grafton Village, Conway, and we also have Falmouth, and we have Hartwood. Okay. Stafford, we are looking at Stafford, and here we have Conway, we have Grafton Village, and then up north we have Moncure, we have Burns, Winding Creek. So this is just to show you where the schools are and their capacity and what may happen based on proximity adjacency. We have Winding Creek here, and if you look at the numbers, Winding Creek is the one which needs the most attention. It's 96% full right now, and as we look at the projections, I will highlight and I will show you that if nothing is done now, then next year itself it's going to be over capacity. Whitewater is 90%, and here the schools which may be able to take in some students could be Moncure, could be Park Ridge. And that was our capacity analysis. The next thing that I want to highlight here on this slide is the enrollment projection. The enrollment projections, what you can see is on the left is your schools, and they are listed in alphabetical order. We have the program capacity. The next column is current enrollment as of September 2018. And then we have the 10-year projections. Now, once again, we have used a color scheme. The light green means that it's less than 90%. The yellow is 90 to 99%, and the orange and red is when the school is over capacity. So here, if you look at Winding Creek, as I told you before, that in the very next year itself, it's going to be over capacity. And then we have Rock Hill, which will still be okay next year, but then the following year, it's going to be over capacity. All right? So here, this is, at a glance, you can see that this is the time to take action. If you don't, then some of your schools will start getting over capacity, while the others would be under capacity, underutilized. So some observations based on enrollment projections. And here we are trying to focus on 5 years. So the schools which would be greater than 90% capacity in the next 5 years would be Brent, Burns, Hartwood, Stafford, and Whitewater. Schools which would be over capacity would be Rocky Run and Winding Creek. So these are our observations based on current enrollment and the enrollment projections. And to follow on, Garrisonville will reach only 65% of its capacity, and Rock Hill will reach 70% capacity in 5 years. So there is a lot of room in these schools, while the other schools are being fully utilized and will be over capacity. So far I showed you capacity analysis, I showed you enrollment projection analysis, and the third thing that I'm going to show you is connectivity or contiguity analysis. So on this slide, what you see is 2 insets, okay? One is, we call it inset A, which is in the northern part of the county, and then we have inset B. So in the following slides, I will show you what these insets are and which schools I'm going to talk about. So the observations here are that some schools do not have a contiguous attendance area. And these schools are Hampton Oaks, Park Ridge, Falmouth, and Brent. So I'm going to show you zoomed in maps so you can see how the attendance areas are. So Hampton Oaks and Park Ridge. If you look at Hampton Oaks, we have it in blue. And you can see how it has 3 separate areas where the students are coming to Hampton Oaks and they are not connected. Okay? The other one is Park Ridge. We have Park Ridge and we have a separate area from where students are coming to Park Ridge. Okay? So that was inset A from the previous map. Now in this one, we are focusing on Falmouth and Brent. So if you notice, we have a little small area for Brent, which is not connected, okay? And then we have two areas which are not connected, and you have students going to Falmouth, okay? Now, at the very beginning, I told you that we are going to do redistricting based on planning units. So I wanted to put a map on the screen so that you get an idea of what the planning units look like. And here in this particular map, I have the planning units, and I have color-coded them by the number of students living in each planning unit. So the darker the color, the more students in that planning unit. So when we are going to make new alternate plans, we will be using these planning units, okay? So far I showed you capacity analysis, I showed you enrollment projection analysis, and I showed you connectivity or contiguity analysis. Now here what I want to tell you, what we are going to do now, okay? We are going to develop two alternate plans, and our goal is going to be balancing the enrollment. And what we are going to do is we are going to produce maps and statistics, so we'll show you where the old boundary is and where the proposed boundary would be. So you would get an opportunity to take a look at them, provide us with feedback, and we will also develop pros and cons. So you would know, okay, if I go with this plan, what is the good part about it and what is not so good? So we will do that for you. We will create the new boundary lines and we will describe the changes. And the important thing is we want to communicate with you. So we have developed some channels here. The first one is the SCPS redistricting page. So we have a link here for you that anytime there is an update, the school will post it. So you go ahead and you keep checking this website. The second one is an email address. That email address is for us. So anytime you have a question, you send it to scps2018@arkbridge.com, and that question or comment is going to come to us, and we are going to share all those with the school, and we will provide you with a response. We have also put together a Facebook page for you, so make sure you visit the Facebook page. We have a Twitter account, and so we will try to keep you updated. And I know many of you are trying to take pictures of the screen. We do have a frequently asked questions flyer, and in that, at the back, we have all these URLs listed. I also have an Instagram page, so if there are Instagram savvy people, they can check the Instagram as well. So this is all I had to share with you today, and this was the as-is model. And with this, I'm going to give it back to Cherie, and she is going to take the questions. And
Before we go with questions, first I want to welcome Ms. Jamie Decatur, school board member that is here. Thank you for being here. So I just want to reinforce what Cherie said. We have a lot of questions, which is terrific, and we're going to take only questions from the postcards. So if you ask a question and we're going to give you the answer, that we know at this point in time. We're also going to be honest with you and say we will need to get back with you because we don't want to make up answers, all right? I also want to introduce Scott Horan and Matt Townsend from the Planning Department from the school system because they're going to help answer the questions that I don't want to answer, okay? So that's basically the ground rules, and at 8:30, we are going to stop. But if your question has not been answered, you're giving us contact information, and again, in the next 24, 48 hours, we will respond to your question, okay? So thank you, and now it's yours, Cherie.
All right, at this time, we will move into the question and answer session of the program. We'll begin with our first question. Will students go to the elementary that is closest to them, or will they pass 2 or 3 schools on the way to their assigned school? Who would like to take that question? Oh, you know what? Yep.
So obviously, the objective, as you saw on the PowerPoint, is probably the primary criteria we'll try for proximity, that you will go to the schools closest to where you live, but recognizing that some parts of the community are growing faster than others, so that might not hold true in every case. All right?
All right, thank you. All right, our next question. I have one child enrolled and scheduled to enroll next year. Will any grandfather clause account for siblings remaining in the same school?
Okay, the only grandfather clause will be rising 5th graders will be able to remain at their school contingent upon their family providing transportation. Siblings will not be grandfathers, okay? Only rising 5th graders.
Okay. Given the role of the Board of Supervisors has on local development, what has been their involvement in the redistricting process? What are the plans to engage the Board of Supervisors in the future?
Okay, so I believe just maybe more opinion than fact, but I provide some fact. School board and Board of Supervisors have regular conversations. Next week, we're actually having a meeting where 7 school board members will meet with the 7 Board of Supervisors, and so this conversation has been and will continue to be ongoing.
Are you required by law to socially engineer school zones in order to balance segments of the community?
Okay, I'm not totally clear what the social engineering part means. I think I have an idea. I think we have a responsibility to make sure that our schools have a level of equity, and that's the direction, one of the criteria that we're using, but I'm not going to address social engineering.
Okay. Why no full-scale redistricting so no continuity of education can be addressed? Small localized redistricting seems like a Band-Aid on the bigger issue that needs more schools and full-scale redistricting of all grades and areas.
Yeah, right now, the elementary is our priority area. We don't see at this point a need to do a middle and high school redistricting. And also, before we would enter the middle school redistricting, we want to get clarity on the feeder school patterns that go into the middle school, and then, of course, the middle schools that go into the high school. So the decision was, based on what you saw there in the data, is to address the most critical need at this point.
My neighborhood has been redistricted 3 times in the last 10 years. Will the history of previous redistricting be taken into account as a criteria during this process? If not, why not? It seems some neighborhoods constantly have to change, while others never change.
Yeah, I guess my answer was yes. The history of previous redistricting is being looked at, has been looked at. Only thing I could tell you, you know the community better than I do. I've only been here for 4 months. we're growing at a fast rate. So when we redistrict, we use our best data and use our best forecasting, and then we also try to anticipate new development and so on. And when we reach a capacity that we're not comfortable with, we don't think it's good for learning, then we go back to the redistricting and try to work with the Board of Supervisors in getting funding for additional buildings.
Will there be any changes or redistribution of school staff or principals as a result of redistricting? How will comments from the public hearing be considered? Could public comments result in a change to the redistricting plan? How is capacity measured?
That was a smart writer. They wrote a lot of questions. Okay, so I will just answer, I remember two of them. Okay, first of all, absolutely when we redistrict, so that's why the school board is being highly encouraged in February, late February, to make a decision. They will have public hearings at their meetings before they make decisions. And of course, feedback, I think we're showing you we're absolutely seeking feedback. We want input. So it absolutely will be considered. Staffing patterns will change. Staff will be redirected based on the redistricting, and obviously that's one of the reasons we want this process to be completed by late February, early March, the latest. Not only do we have to work with staff to do reassignments, but then we have to work with transportation and other resources. So it's a big project ahead for all of us.
What is the criteria for determining which children are redistricted?
What was it?
What's the criteria for determining which children are redistricted?
Okay, so I should have brought it with me, but the school board has a list of criteria that they look at. Size of the classes in a building, obviously capacity is way up there. Proximity is up there. Then there are other areas like balancing some of our, I'm not sure balance is the right word, but to look at the programs for children with special needs, where is the best location for them. Many of the programs for children with certain disabilities are not, they might be located in a building, but they serve children from multiple schools. So there's a lot of criteria, and we will post on the website the school board adopted criteria that they look at. That will be on there tomorrow.
Okay. When redistricting, will greater consideration be given to existing families over unrealized families in new or future subdivisions currently being built?
So when we redistrict, truthfully what will happen, we'll create new boundaries. And whoever's in that boundary will be assigned a school. The only exemption, again, will be rising fifth graders. But there's, once a family moves into Stafford, regardless of what date they arrive here, they're a full member of our school system.
Is there a plan to look at feeder patterns?
Yes, absolutely.
How are projected enrollments calculated? If new subdivisions are being built, are these numbers estimated or taken into consideration?
Okay. Matt.
Thank you. So new developments are accounted for in the projections. Every approved residential development as of September 1st of every year is calculated as part of the projections. The projections are mainly two components. We have a cohort survival side, a new development growth side, and they come together to equal the projection. In a nutshell.
Okay. How does this affect the pre-K program? Will Falmouth Elementary School keep its pre-K program?
Okay, so you might have noticed that the enrollment numbers we were showing, you said without pre-K, because what you may be aware, maybe not aware, we're opening up in August a program on Garrisonville Road. We have a program in the southern part of Stafford, and we're opening up a program in the northern part. It's the old Fredericksburg Christian School, if you're familiar with it. So preschool, and this is something that school board and board of supervisors worked to create additional space and really, I think, also increase the quality of the preschool program. But anyway, preschool classes will be removed from the elementary schools, and they'll either be in the southern part at Melchers or the northern part, and then we'll have additional classroom space.
Okay. How are planning unit boundaries defined?
Planning units are the building blocks of attendance areas. They are also the basis that the projections are calculated on. So they are the statistical unit that makes up the projections. They are defined by they're snapped to parcel lines in GIS. So natural barriers such as I-95, Potomac Creek are accounted for. Subdivision lines are accounted for. And we look for natural breaks in a piece of geography where it makes sense to draw lines there.
I've heard that redistricting happens quite frequently. Is this correct? If so, why is building a new school the solution? And how did you get the enrollment numbers?
Okay, so the school board has what's called a capital improvement plan. And the capital improvement plan is our communication vehicle to the public and the board of supervisors of large projects that we believe is needed for multiple reasons. One, because the condition of a school might need to improve their HVAC system, it may need some expansion of space, and also because of enrollment. And our school system, again, continues to grow at a rate that suggests pretty clearly that we will need more schools. So we have submitted to the Board of Supervisors the capital improvement plan, which the school board adopted just a couple weeks ago. And next week's meeting is an opportunity for the school board and Board of Supervisors to talk about the capital improvement plan, which I will just tell you at this point in time, does have 2 new schools that the school board has approved, and obviously it's continued upon county funding. One is a 18th elementary school, and one is a 6th high school.
Are they going to be redistricting all grade levels, K through 12, or just elementary?
Yeah, right now, just elementaries.
How did these initial feeder plans become so disjointed initially?
I don't know.
Will the middle schools be affected? Will there be any more new elementary schools opening? What happens when all the elementary schools are over capacity?
Yeah, so the middle schools will only be impacted because, as we're describing, the feeder schools, the children that are in the middle schools, they're not going to be impacted. But the children, again, the rising 6th graders, depending on the feeder school system, they could be going to another middle school, all right? It's too early to really know that at this point. What was the second one?
Will there be any more new elementary schools?
Yeah, so as I just described, the capital improvement plan does have the 18th elementary school.
Next question, are you utilizing the comprehensive plan and specifically looking at the targeted growth areas and already approved subdivisions and how that will impact enrollment numbers for the redistricting?
Yeah, we work actually very closely with the county's planning department and the school system planning department, and it's a joint effort in our enrollment projections and figuring out not only the number of new schools, but where those schools should be located.
So are you aware of how difficult using program capacity numbers versus design capacity numbers alters the true impact to the school and highly favors developers? This is coming from the chairman of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to him after. I'm not sure I'm really clear of that question.
Next question. Our neighborhood is on a feeder pattern. If our elementary school is changed outside of our feeder pattern, this was just done this year, will our kids be taken outside of the feeder pattern for elementary, then go back inside the feeder pattern, middle and high school?
Okay, so the feeder patterns, again, we're going to try to get feeder patterns that are, as somebody described early, maybe fragmented. We're going to try to get some consistency and clarity and have, it's not always going to work out because we have 17 elementary schools and we have, 8 middle schools? So, just by the math, it's not going to be that clean. The high school, I don't see any impact to the feeder system at this point in time.
Okay, next question. Do you take into consideration the route the buses will travel? For example, trying to avoid heavier traveled roads such as Route 1, does this have any weight at all?
Yeah, so the answer is absolutely yes, but as you know, this community, when you think you're avoiding something, all of a sudden you have a reminder that everybody else is trying to avoid it, and then it gets pretty congested. So our transportation department GPSs all our routes, and they know how long buses are taking from the time they started to the time they end. And when they see some routes just taking too long over time, then they try to adjust the routes so they could move faster.
Okay. What data did you use to make your enrollment projections? Are you factoring in a 5-year capacity projection for the rezone transfers to prevent having to move students again in 3 to 5 years?
You're nodding, you don't want to answer it?
So when we rezone, all the numbers that you saw up there, next year they're going to change. I want to make sure everybody's clear that when we showed you 70, 75%, 80, 90, 95%, that's where we are today. And that's where we would be tomorrow, next year, in 2 years, 3 years, if we did not do anything. So once we redistrict, and September 30th, so you know, in public education, there's 2 dates that we have to officially report our enrollment to the Department of Education. It's September 30th and March 31st. So sometime in October or November, because we have to wait to the state to verify it, we will do again what you just saw. And what you will see, no doubt, will be adjustments to that number. I will also just say this is just from experience. This is probably my 4th or 5th redistricting experience. When you go further out than 5 years, you have less confidence in the data. Okay, the first 5 years, you tend to have much greater confidence. All right.
Okay. How should we communicate our concerns about redistricting 5th graders who have been at the same elementary school their entire school career? It would be devastating for our son to be pulled out of his school for his last year where all of his relationships and high comfort level has already been established.
Yeah, so if you only have a rising 5th grader and you want that child to stay at that school and your child to stay at that school and you're able to provide transportation, then your child could stay at that school. It would be an enormous disruption to our transportation and getting all the other children to where they need to be if buses were put in a position where they would have to transport rising 5th grade children if parents were unable to do that.
Are there any plans to help overcrowding by relocating programs such as pre-K or autism classrooms?
Yes, the answer, so the pre-K we're already doing, and our special ed directors and other staff are part of what we call a planning team, and we're looking at where it makes the greatest sense for those programs to be based on where those children live, and then also how we could alleviate some space because maybe a school has more programs than maybe some other schools.
Are the redistricting plans taking into account the need for construction of new schools, elementary, middle, and high school?
No, not at this point, because we do not have any ground broken for a new school.
Will children living or attending Kate Waller Barrett Elementary School transfer to, I think that's Hampton?
The answer is we don't know at this point.
Are there CIP for any new schools?
Yes, there's a CIP approval by the school board, not funded yet by the Board of Supervisors, as I described, for a new elementary school 18, high school number 6.
When considering a student's distance to a school, is it as the crow flies or driving distance?
I never really understood what the crow fly means. Okay, it's more, I think, the driving distance than the crow flies. I think crow flies could get over 95 a lot quicker than the cars. Okay.
Overdevelopment in some areas has caused the overcrowding in some schools. Has there been any consideration to stop developing in certain areas and issue permits to other areas to balance the population?
Yeah, that function, responsibility really is not school board or mine. That's a good question to ask your Board of Supervisor representative.
Capacity percentages are mentioned with emphasis. Do all schools have the same numerical capacity? Do they all have the same number of each grade or classroom?
So there's standardization. There's an exception to what I'm about to say, and I'll mention the standardization. Standardization first. For K through 5, there's 24 for K, 25 for to second and third grade? 26, and then 27 for fourth and fifth. Based on federal and state regulations, certain schools that have a higher percentage of children that qualify for free and reduced lunch, their K through third grade numbers have to be lower. Okay.
Are geographical boundaries like lakes or I-95 taken into account for bus route planning?
Absolutely.
How did capacity increase by over 1,000 for the input into the redistricting? They're saying it was 15,171, previously 13,496.
Okay, how did capacity increase by over 1,000?
For the input into the redistricting.
Some of that was accounting for the new rebuilt Moncure Elementary School, and then most of that is the change in the assumption of the class size that was a part of the program capacity calculation.
Are there any plans to build new elementary schools in the crowded areas? If so, when and where? If not, why not? Those communities could face redistricting again.
So again, there is a 18th school, elementary school. I think, I'll just tell you what I think. I think it would make sense that we would be building it where there's a great need and based on where our children are. The date, 20, which is 27. Yeah, 2027 would be the opening date. I just, again, this, in Virginia, depending if you came from other states, different states do it differently. But in Virginia, the Board of Supervisors is the appropriating body. So school board has submitted a plan. We're going to discuss it again next week. And then we're hoping there could be a consensus agreement that we could start funding, planning for the funding for that project.
When can we expect another round of redistricting? How long are the districts generated by this round anticipated to last?
It's hard, it's, I say the next redistricting will happen after I retire. It should have happened before I got hired. No, but right now, this is what we're planning for the elementary school. I think the school board has been, if you follow it on the school board, if you watch the school board meetings or come to it, we're transparent in announcing these. I really appreciate the questions, everybody being here. Would we want to do redistricting if we had a choice? The answer would be no. So right now, the only plan is to do the elementary redistricting. School board will look at the middle schools and we'll look at high school, but we believe this redistricting and with the 18th school will take us a long way.
Our neighborhood only contains 28 houses. Will the size of the neighborhood be taken into consideration? Our neighborhood follows a feeder pattern, and it seems unlikely our 28 houses will tip any school to capacity.
Yeah, I think, again, it's, I don't want to say something I'm not sure of, okay? That might be a question with a specific address, location that you could send the consultants, and we could take a look at that.
Why does SCPS continue to do very short-term redistricting instead of looking at long-term planning such as 10 to 15-year plan? Also, why has so much influence been given to the more vocal neighborhoods? This keeps resulting in districts that are not sensibly drawn.
Okay, so this is, again, maybe a little bit more opinion than fact. So I drive around, we have 31 schools. I'm driving around this county every day. And one day I drive around, I see rolling hills. Next day I see big machinery. And I guess if I come back in 6 months, I'll see houses being built. So one reason we redistrict a lot is because there's significant growth, there's significant housing, there's migration coming. We were just at a meeting last week. And we heard a presentation about Stafford, and I think what you already heard was that the growth, absent of a recession, will continue in this area, people coming from the north, coming down south. So we are trying to balance the schools so we don't have schools that have 95, 100, 105% capacity, and others having 65, 70%.
There are numerous children within the district that have endured emotional stress at home and school. My child has finally found a school where he has connected and improved at school. Is the board going to work with guidance counselors and already emotionally impacted families before ripping them out of their safe zone and moving to a new school to start over?
Yeah, I absolutely, that we will work with groups, but we would obviously, if a parent informed us, we would notify school counselors and others to work with your child to alleviate as much as possible whatever stress they may have due to a new school.
Are there plans to build larger schools or build additional classrooms, build to keep levels under 80%?
So I just mentioned new schools. Their school board, not to get off topic too much, but we're looking at some renovations to Ferry Farm, and there's other renovation projects that are down the road. Larger schools, again, that becomes a conversation with the Board of Supervisors because larger schools are contingent upon funding and acreage. So it's too early for me to tell you that the answer would be yes or no.
Okay. And this is the last card I have, so if anybody has any more cards, bring them up here. Okay, I see some more coming, okay. For the consulting firm, how many elementary school redistricting have they done?
We've done many redistrictings, and the last one that we did was for Yorktown, in Virginia. We have worked with the San Diego Public Schools in California. We have worked with the Suffolk County Public Schools, so we have worked with a lot of schools, as well as city and council districts.
Okay. All right, I have some more coming. So if we have a rising sixth grader in August 2019, we are redistricted, we have to provide transportation for our child to stay in the school he's in?
Yeah, I think, I know I made a comment before that I'm just rethinking my comment about how the middle school is going to be impacted. So I'm going to, because your question is really pertaining to a middle school student, and I want to just reflect on it a little bit more, and that will be a Q&A that I'll answer on the website. Or if that parent who wrote that wants to email me directly, which you could get my email right off the website, I'll be happy to answer that.
Why doesn't the school board redistrict new neighborhoods before they are built and before they add to the overcrowding?
Well, it's hard to redirect. I mean, the answer is, redirecting or redistricting is already, for many people, a stressful time. And I think it would be hard to explain to people, we're anticipating that there's going to be 200-300 homes here, so we want your child, and that they're going to be here in 5 years, so we're going to ask your child now to go to another school. Again, we pay close attention to the development that happens in our community. The process in Virginia is the capital improvement plan goes to the appropriating body, and every year the school board submits one, and then it goes through a process to see what could be funded or not.
Our neighborhood is a very close-knit neighborhood. Is keeping neighborhoods together going to be the same elementary school being heavily considered?
I think neighborhoods, one of the things they will look at, that's why they showed the map where we have certain neighborhoods that although they're together, they're separated by other neighborhoods that are going into other schools. So I think there's going to be an intent, definitely an intent, to keep neighborhoods. Now, the only thing I would just tell you, from experience, we may all define neighborhoods differently, okay? And I think you understand that. I don't know where you live, but I live in Stafford. In my neighborhood, I don't know, it's pretty big. So, like, I don't know what stops the neighborhood and what starts the neighborhood, but it's just got a lot of homes back there.
Why are you waiting almost 10 years to open a new school?
Okay, so, again, the history has been that, as you saw, the capacity, it depends greatly on the school when we talk about, I think, was it 83%? So, as a school division, our elementary capacity is at 83%. The discussion often is, what's the trigger number that you start planning? And so if the trigger number is 100%, that's when we believe we're going to hit 100%. If the trigger number is a lower percent, then again, if the board is, again, I don't want to give the impression I'm blaming things to the board of supervisors, I'm just trying to explain the history. Then the board of supervisors would be in agreement with the school board and community that when we reach 90%, say, then that would trigger a new school. But right now, it tends to be 100%. I just want to make just elaborate on the center that's going to be at North Stafford. That's actually going to be freeing up 21 classrooms. Okay, so the question before was, will preschool be in in the existing locations? The answer is no. 21 classroom is approximately 500 seats. So by doing that, we were able to capture 500 more children, K-5, in the existing elementary schools.
Why haven't the new capacity figures been shared with the principals and the public?
Well, truthfully, you are probably the first ones. We just got them last week. So we're sharing it with you, okay? And they will be formally presented at a school board, and then it will be posted, but it's actually going to be posted tomorrow morning. So we wait, we use just so you know, we use a consultant firm out of California, North Carolina, the enrollment. Which one? South Carolina, not Virginia. And so after we get the numbers on September 30th, there's a verification and so on. So they're being shared, and if the question is, should we share it more often and be more transparent, then I would say yes.
How will the decisions be based on what teachers get moved during the redistricting? Who is responsible for making the decision, school administrators or HR?
Okay, so the final person responsible is the superintendent. He's given the responsibility to transfer staff, but the process will be collaborative with teachers, administrators, HR. Positions will be posted. Sometimes we would have to transfer a teacher because they have a credential, like maybe a teacher who teaches children with English language learners or children with disabilities. We would have to move that program to another site. In other cases, if there's vacancies, so we'll have two things going on. We'll have natural reduction of teachers because they depart, and then we'll have a teacher movement, some schools less, some schools more.
All right, just one observation, someone just wanted to make a point, suggestion, don't highlight a presentation in dark colors, dark red, green, or orange, because that cannot be read by anyone, so just a suggestion for future presentation, so just a comment.
Yeah, well taken.
Okay,
Thank you.
got it.
Yeah.
The next question is, we have heard how geography drives the new school. How are socioeconomic characteristics taken into account?
Well, again, that's something we look at, but I don't think the school board, I'm sure they would not be supportive of this notion that we drive children many, many miles to balance numbers. I think that's remarkably unfair. I also don't want to make this, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself on this statement. Just because a child qualifies for a free and reduced lunch means nothing except they qualify for free and reduced lunch. They could still be the next Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King, whatever you want to be. So I know school systems look at that. That is one of our criterias, but it surely doesn't rest as a very high criteria for me. And so, you know, the last school system I worked in had 70% free and reduced, and the school system prior to that had 90% free and reduced. And like your children, they were the greatest kids, and many of them went on to great things. So we're letting you know where we are in our free and reduced lunch numbers because we report it, we're required to report it to the state. But I don't want that to be interpreted that if your school is above that 30%, that your school has children that can't perform. That's completely false.
Will teachers living elsewhere continue to be able to enroll their kids in the higher capacity schools?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. The answer is right now we're not seeing any changes in the direction we've gone with teachers that work here. I think it's a great benefit that we offer our staff that they could bring their children to our schools. That my wife was a teacher, and it was a great benefit for her that our daughters, I don't know how they thought about it, but our daughters went to the school that she taught. So right now there's no plan for changes.
Is Embry Mill considered one neighborhood or two? our high schools were split already.
There are multiple planning units within the Embry Mill subdivision.
Okay, and just, this is the last card that I have, but just one suggestion, it might be helpful in the future to use a pointer with the presentation, so they just wanted to.
Yeah, no, these are good. There's no question, the colors, in fairness to the consultants, those are the colors that we presented to it. That's how we presented at school board meetings. But there's no question also, the lighting, we're going to have to adjust that. And the pointer, we're going to get a pointer. So-
Gotcha. That was the last card I have. Are there any more cards? Any more cards? That was the last one. Any other cards that we have?
Would be like an auction.
Okay.
Oh, let's go.
All right, that was the last card. Okay, this concludes the meeting. Thank you so much for attending. The next elementary school redistricting meeting will take place on January 15th at Edward E. Drew Middle School. Once again, January 17th at Stafford Middle School, January 23rd at H.H. Poole Middle School. All meetings begin at 7 p.m. and end at 8:30 p.m. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Those were very thoughtful questions, and we hope to see you at future redistricting meetings. Have a safe evening. Thank you.
Good job, Dr.